Well, his mace skills aren't bad, but I have seen better. Here's your look into Super7, the worst, Black Falcon Undead Warlord of Doom. Abandon hope. Black Falcon, the undead warlord of doom, rides his way, inflicting immortal agony on all in his path. The frightful fiend feels no pain and knows no remorse, driven only to eternal battle and craving only the slow death rattle of his own sworn enemy, everyone. Wandering aimlessly throughout the land, Black Falcon is cursed to live and lives to fight. He cannot be killed, he will never stop. Total destruction is his goal, inevitable victories in his grasp. In his wake lies the charred, barren remnants of past cruel conquests. Ahead of him lies you. In between battles, he's got to stop for his bagged lunch. Baloney. Before, of course, we get a closer look at the worst Black Falcon Undead Warlord of Doom. Let's grab the tape measure and see how tall the figure stands. I think this is the third now worst figure we've looked at here on this channel. And again, if you guys are interested and would like to get this one for yourself, I found this one at Entertainment Earth. I'll put the link down below in the video description. That same link will also save you 10% on anything that's currently in stock over on their site. Factoring in the horns on the top of his helmet, you're looking at Black Falcon standing about 7.5 inches in height, or the figure's going to be about 19 centimeters tall. I've already looked at two, but I'll bring in just one. We're going to slide over the Black Falcon that we're about to have a look at, and we'll bring in Bacula. Bacula was the Bat Prince of Darkness, and you can see he's going to be a little bit shorter when it comes to Black Falcon. I'm not just even saying it by the horns on his head, but he also is just a slightly smaller stature figure compared to the new one that we're looking at here. The thing I really like about the worst line is the fun that Super7 has when it comes to packing the accessories with these figures. Sure, yes, you get swords and spears and shields and all the things that would be implementing destruction on others. But along with that, of course, he has to stop and eat at some point. So Black Falcon comes included with a bagged lunch. I jokingly said earlier bologna. Bologna would be a good sandwich, I feel, to choose when it comes to going on the battlefield and you have to stop for something to eat. Maybe PB&J would also be good as well. Tuna would not be a good idea. Sitting out in the hot sun, tuna would spoil real fast. Not knowing really what exactly is inside his bagged lunch, simply just because, again, it's rolled up like this. It's just a fun little thing to come include with the figure. Now, I've already swapped out, as you saw at the beginning of this review, one of the hands to actually hold the bagged lunch. And maybe the lunch has already spoiled by the way he's actually carrying it around with him. You take the bagged lunch and you basically wedge it in between his thumb and his pointer, and he can carry around his lunch that way. I don't really think that's the safest way to be carrying around lunch. But also, as well, with that, he gets himself a thermos. It could be a hot beverage. For all I know, it could be chicken soup. It does at least open up, though. You can take the top off. There's nothing really obviously inside of it. And, of course, he carries that around with him as well. Now, I've also got one other hand that I've changed out. Again, I know you guys saw this at the beginning of the review. But this gripping hand not only is good for holding the sword, but while it may not be big enough to actually hold the full thermos, you could take the end of the lid and you can wedge it in between his fingers. And that's basically what I did and had him displayed. In fact, I will carry over that same idea when it comes to wrapping up this review. This guy's going to be displayed on the shelf, displayed with his lunch. I think that's fun. Now, the figure also as well comes included. Now, that's fun in games aside. The figure also comes included with some weapons. First of all, a really nice looking shield. A darker color of a Werther's original, and then an outer area there of gold. I really think this is painted nicely and really well molded as well. He's got the little eagle there crest on the front, something that will carry over actually. He seems to really like eagles. He's got it on his forearm gauntlet. He's got it also on the front of his belt. It's also here on his shield. On the back of the shield there is a handle that he can hold. He has a gripping hand, of course. So you could use really the hand that he has right now. Let's go ahead and take the lunch out of his hands. Clip the shield. Just simply slide it down onto the gripping hand. Now he can actually hold the shield. Now, while the other hand is not really going to be good for holding swords, the figure does also have a sword, and it's a really nice carried over color of the sort of brown, again, the gold, and you got a really nice silver painted sword, or at least the blade for the sword. The guard and the hilt, again, match the color of the shield, so he likes to keep things consistent. There really isn't a place where you can store the sword. I was kind of looking around, and I moved the cape out of the way to see if maybe there was a holster. I would have loved if they could have found a little holster, a little hook, that you could have actually looped the sword onto. Sadly, though, he doesn't have anything like that. The figure also comes included with a spear, a good long pronged spear, good for picking up bodies or remains. And again, it's got the color over of the carried over color of the gold. It's a nice little brushing of brown added in there as well. It's a really nice looking spear. But again, there's really no place to store it on the figure. One thing that I was a little perplexed about, I'm going to introduce this to you guys. You guys can let me know what I'm going to be supposed to be doing with this. It kind of, in a way, looks like a batarang. Maybe he's supposed to be throwing this around. I guess you could really use the same hand for holding the bagged lunch. Probably could easily just take that and, of course, clip the batarang in between his fingers. I really don't know specifically what it's supposed to be. I thought it maybe belonged to something else, but there's no place really on the shield. There certainly isn't a place on the sword, and there is no place at all on his body where I would imagine that would clip in place. So I would imagine it's probably just something that he's going to be throwing around. Let's take these accessories, at least the ones that we've looked at, and we'll move those to the side. The figure also comes included with all these extra hands. Now, he comes with the pinching hand, he comes with the gripping hand, he also comes with some gestured hands, very dynamic posed hands, nicely painted, nicely painted. Look at all the additional silver that they've added to this. Again, it's got the nice looking brown, it's got some additional dark black on the inside of that. He's also got a couple of gripping hands. Now, he has one gripping hand, I've already kind of used it for this side. He basically has the mirror flip of that then would go on this side. And then finally, the figure also has a closed fist. You know, while of course he needs to be punching away people, while anyone who wants to be stealing his lunch. Tuna salad, though, nobody's going to be bothering him about those. And then the last hands that he also comes included with is gripping hands that sort of have these molten lava orange. Boy, these look really neat. The plastic that they've actually used, you'll be happy to know, the pegs are at least an opaque plastic. So I don't think there's likelihood that these will actually crack. But I really like the way they've sculpted these. And there's an actual rather interesting head that's going to go along with these specific hands. We're going to come back to these. Now the figure, I'm going to pick him up right now, does have a defaulted head sculpt, which basically just, as I would best describe, as a smiling skull face. He seems pretty happy. He's sitting down for his lunch. But if he wants to have a turn for the worse, he also has this head sculpt as well. That breaks off one of at least the horns, and it carves down the side of his face. So it looks like somebody probably just took an axe and just bludgeoned him. Look just the big carving that he has on the side of his helmet. It's basically the same head sculpt. Of course, it just has, helmet-wise, I would say it's about the same, but differently resculpted face. And it does have an open mouth, but it doesn't close. This is all permanently molded the way that it is. Changing out the heads is just a case of popping the head off the ball joint. When you do this, though, you want to be careful of the medallion that he has, just because, again, like the medallion is a separate piece. There we go. This medallion is a separate piece, and if you have it far enough up, when you're pulling the head off, you want to make sure that this doesn't get snagged in the process. But this is removable. The cape is also removable. We're just going to pop the new head in place, and that's basically what it's going to look like. I know. I didn't have it completely in place on top of the ball joint, because I will in a second swap it out with this head sculpt, which is very similar, in fact, but going back to the idea with the sculpted molten hands, he also has something very similar here to his head sculpt. The only thing, unfortunately, about this, though, is while they've done such a great job of molding this in a translucent orange plastic, they have failed, I feel, by not darkening the color of the inside of his mouth or the sockets of his eyes. It just sort of is one consistent, I feel, unfinished bit of plastic. It's nicely sculpted here for the helmet. I just wish that some of the paint could have found its way also onto the eyes and the mouth. Again, changing out this. I also want to show you again, like, this is removable. If you wanted to also as well, you could detach this. This is just snapped from the front. And we just can remove the cape altogether, really, if you wanted to. The cape, one thing I will say, though, about the cape is it's got some really nice tears that they've added to it, some wear and tear. And it also has a wire frame that runs right down the side here and all the way down the side of the cape. So you can actually move this around if you want to. I'm going to leave this off for right now, just because it's a lot easier to guys show you the details on the actual figure itself. And let's go ahead and we'll pop the new head sculpt in place. Now, unfortunately, with the head sculpt being as it is right now, first of all, I may want to have heated this, maybe not heat it with hot lava. but popping that in place, I'm going to have to put a little bit more pressure. I had actually, in fact, heated this up with a hairdryer, but with the amount of time that I've spent talking about all the other things, I may have to take a bit of a cutaway in order to get that properly in place. Yeah, the head sculpt looks fantastic. Unfortunately, though, I mean, being that they use the coloring of the plastic, what would normally have been then for the skull face, it doesn't quite jive, unfortunately, then using the translucent orange plastic, because, of course, you can notice that the neck is a different color altogether. And then from there, of course, you can just swap the hands out and use these hands instead. But I think just because, again, I'm going to have to go back and heat this back up again with either hot water or just the simple thing of using a hairdryer, I'm going to pop at least the head that's been in there this whole time, pop it back properly in place. Yeah, you can see kind of how like the neck is a little bit more in tune and in line with the coloring that they use for the face. They've added all this additional yellow I really don't think is necessary, but at least it matches the color of the face just a little bit better. He's got this really interesting looking armor that has that brown and it has that kind of trim in silver. And he's got on the front, he's got it also here on the shoulders, which is a softer bit of plastic. Also has it on the gauntlets with some really nice looking spikes sticking out. But what's rather interesting is if you look on the one forearm, carrying over the motif of loving eagles, he's got himself a bird of prey right on top of his forearm. It's not removable. You will want to be of course careful when it comes to rotating the figure's forearms, that you don't want to put too much pressure on that, but I think that's a really nice, I've never really seen a figure that has a little sculpted eagle like that. I don't think it serves any purpose whatsoever, unless these happen to be sharp and you can actually use it just sort of a slashing weapon. He's got that same sort of eagle again down below here, which is only like the little bit of areas where it gets broken up on color, because most of it is actually just this gray, just this brown. There's a little bit of a different departure when it comes to also the kneecaps. He's got these really cool looking skulls, but all in all, just a really nice looking figure. Now, when we did have a look at Bachelor before, one of the biggest problems I had really with the figure was he had really loose knees. One of the figures, like his lower legs, not only moved forward and back, which really should never really be the case when it comes to knee articulation, but he just was generally loose from basically like the knee down. I don't have that problem at all when it comes to Black Falcon. In fact, for the figure's articulation, the head's going to be on a ball joint, so it rotates all the way around. It looks up only about that far, and it looks down that far, and you can also hinge it back and forth as well. Shoulders easily come out, just because, again, shoulder pads aren't large enough to really occupy too much space, and they're also softer plastic too, so it's much easier to bring those forearms out. You can bring the arms only this far forward, and you can also bring it this far back, just because, again, like you don't want to rotate it all the way. It's probably going to just yank the plastic off the torso, and you don't want that to happen. While the figure doesn't have any swivel in his bicep, what he has instead, though, is a swivel in his forearm that has as well a hinge that you can bring it forward and back. The hands as well rotate all the way around. The figure has an upper torso ball joint, softer skirting here, and there's a split on the side that allows the legs to hinge outward. You can bring those legs forward and back. Some swivel at the top of the thigh. The figure has also as well just a single hinge. Ouch, ouch. I'm just kidding. It's actually not that bad. He's got these spikes. Obviously, you're going to feel it when you're moving the legs back and forth this way. You can rotate them this way as well. Ankle pivot back and forth, and you can also rock it back and forth this way as well. And just in case you're curious, yes, the figure of Black Falcon does have pegals in the undersides of his feet. Well, he stands okay the way he is right now. If you wanted to use yourself a display stand, even though one isn't included with this figure, you can easily use one from another figure line. Bringing back in Bachelor, improvements, I will say, have been made. Like, the figures don't really look like they belong as part of the same wave, but as you'll see when we look at other future worst figures, they're sort of just kind of hand-picked characters from across the timelines. And while, again, like, I don't think he would necessarily, in normal situations, pair up nicely with Bachelor on the shelf. They're nice-looking figures, but I definitely think, like, the engineering worked better now with the new Black Falcon. Joints seem a little bit tighter. The paint seems also nicer handled, and also, as well, I love all the additional articulation points and the accessories. That's my favorite thing about these figures, all the accessories that pack along with them. While Bachelor is maybe a little weaker of a figure now, comparing him, say, to Black Falcon, all of the accessories that came included with Black Falcon, all of the accessories that now come included with Bachelor, all the accessories that now come included with Black Falcon, really, really nice things that they always include when it comes to these Super 7 releases. That's me recreating, by the way, me with a hairdryer for about 5 minutes or so just to soften up the plastic on the inside of this particular head so I could easily then swap it out with the one that I had looked at before. This may, though, come with the territory when it comes to Super 7 releases that not always do the head plop properly onto the ball pegs, that sometimes you do have to assist them a little bit by softening up the plastic. I've also taken the liberty of matching up the hands at least, so he does have more of that molten lava look. It doesn't gel completely when it comes to his neck because the neck is still sort of that bone white coloring that the other two heads accommodate better with, but man, does that ever look really neat. Now, also, I've decided here for final looks just to leave off the cape in its entirety. It's just a case of unsnapping. That's not as much believable of a sound for us unsnapping, but you can unsnap easily the cape and remove it altogether if you wanted to. The hardest thing really when it comes to these Super 7 releases is deciding really what accessories I want to display these with. And that's not even just the worst figures either. That's just across the board. Super 7, to their credit, always pack all of these figures, whether it be the Ultimate Worst or whether it be any of the other Ultimate figures that they're doing with so many accessories, it's really hard pressed to choose which ones you want to have displayed with the figure. Occasionally I do find myself going back to these Ultimate figures and sort of just changing out their accessories. While I may have Molten Lava Face Skeleton for right now, very well though, I'm sure in a week or so I'm probably going to be going back to the shelf and giving him back his bagged lunch. What do you guys think, though, of the figure? Let me know down below in the comments section. Have you been collecting any of the worst figures? Or is Black Falcon maybe the nudge that you needed to start collecting the line? Also, as well, if you guys are interested and would like to get this one for yourself, I did find Black Falcon, the Undead Warlord of Doom. I want to make sure I include that for his full name. I did actually find this one over on Entertainment Earth. Not only can you click the link down below in the video description that will take you on over and give you right away the link directly to Black Falcon, but using also that link will save you 10% on anything that's currently on site, over on their site, currently in stock. If you guys enjoyed this video, I want to hit with a like. If you guys are loving the content you guys are seeing and you want to stick around for some more worst figures, I mean, worst in the sense of what Super 7 is calling it. I'd like to think I'm not just reviewing worst figures here on this channel, but there are going to be at least one more worst figure from Super 7 that we will be looking at in an upcoming video. So make sure you're coming back for that. Of course, as always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.